Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Vista's podcast, Hertz. Today, we have gathered for our Pride Month special edition. Gracing the podcast is a very special guest. He joined in 2018 as a postdoctoral fellow in Ashoka University to do research on music, but also teach biology and music languages. He is currently a visiting professor of performing arts. Since Jan 2022, he's been visiting faculty in the Department of Performing Arts, teaching music and languages. Now he's continuing on his musicological research, but he has been essentially singing for over 20 years now. We heartily welcome Dr. Achintya Prahlad to the podcast.
Hi, hello everyone.
Um, so I'd just like to kickstart the interview by asking something very fundamental. So you've described yourself as a musician with an academic background, sorry, with an academic approach. Now, is there any specific reason that you call yourself that? And what does an academic approach? What perspective does it give you about music?
Uh, for me, learning music has not just been about singing. I've also been very, very curious about, where does all this music come from, or the sort of similarities and differences between Carnatic and Hindustani music, or sometimes there are some ragas that correspond between the two musical systems. It's not true for all ragas, but there are some. What is the origin of these ragas, or how were they sung earlier and how are they sung now? What has changed? How have they evolved? Such questions have always been there in my mind, like for quite a long time. Maybe not since I was a kid, but for many years I've had these questions in my mind. So that's why I say I have an academic approach, in the sense I'm interested in the music beyond just the performance of it. Yeah. And also, it's also interesting to see how faith or mythology or things like these influence music. So that's another big academic interest of mine. Yeah, so I hope that answers this question.
So, you talked about some of the themes, especially with love and things like that, in a lot of Hindustani music. So, I just wanted to take it from there in the context of queer culture and queerness. So, how do you think Hindustani music really connects with queer culture?
See, I don't think Hindustani music itself connects specifically with queer culture. But then if you are a queer person, the way you experience the music or the way you express yourself in the music will be influenced by your own queerness. So the typical way in which love is represented in Hindustani music is the person speaking is understood to be a woman, and she is either addressing or talking about her lover, who is a man. So that thing is there. So when I compose, I do talk about a male lover, but then I don't see myself as a woman, or I don't represent myself as a woman. So it's typically understood that the devotee, the bhakta, is the female lover, and the male lover is Krishna. That is how many people understand it. But again, that's not everybody's understanding of it. I I see it as love between human beings, typically. Uh, of course, there might also be a prema bhakti angle to that. But then the basic point is, I see the lover as a man and myself as a man. That is my approach to it. For example, were you there for my Vistar performance? As in, the Valentine's Day thing that you guys had, where everybody was singing, and I also sang a little there. So I sang this Marathi Bhavgeet, which is like it's not considered classical music as such, but some of these can be. They're basically poems that are set to music, typically romantic poems. So I sang this Marathi Bhavgeet, Shukratara Mandavara, which is it's originally conceptualized as a duet between a man and a woman. And Marathi, like Hindi, is a heavily gendered language. So then, like, the original song was a duet between Arun Date and Sudha Malhotra. she sang the female part, and Arun Date sang the male part. But then wherever the female parts come, I sing those as masculine because I can't identify with. In being a queer person, I can't identify with heterosexual love. It's somewhat. I mean, even though it's something that one is very familiar with, it's still alien. It's not me. So when I sing that song, I always sing it like this, with both people being male. That's one thing. And I have myself also composed a Marathi Bhavgeet where both the people are male. So my personal life comes into the way I sing or the way I compose.
That's a very interesting take on love from you to hear it in this way. So then my next question would be, as you have always taken your carried this perspective with you, how did this aspect of queerness play into your perspective of Hindustani music while you were learning it? Did it differ as you learned it, as you understood the music, and as you grew older, and as your perspective on love and on queerness in general developed?
See, to be honest, I mean, when I was a child, I didn't know that I was queer, right? I had no idea. I mean, I hadn't even sort of experienced love for anyone to really know. So until 2011, I mean, I wasn't really. I mean, sure, once I was in 12th standard, I mean, dhire I started having doubts, am I queer? I mean, that time I didn't know the word queer, I only knew gay. So I thought, am I gay? So, but that happened very late in life. But then I used to basically brush it aside pretty much. It's only 2011 onwards that I actually started feeling that, yes, it's not a phase, or it's not just something that I'm thinking about. It's not just my mind playing games, it's a real thing. So that happened quite late in life. So when I was learning music, for the most part, I wasn't really thinking about it. But 2011 onwards, but 2011 also, it's quite a long time ago. It's like 11 years ago. Uh, things slightly started changing, and that's when I started composing a lot. Actually, I had composed only very basic things before that, but then I think once I sort of accepted my queerness, or understood that it's my reality, that automatically started influencing my compositions. That happened, and then I started composing songs based on feelings that I experienced for real people. So yeah, I mean, during my initial years of learning music, I don't think queerness played any role. It's only over the past decade and a bit more.
So you had mentioned that Hindi music might I mean it's typically sort of represented as between a man and a woman. So do you think there are other forms of music in India that are better predisposed to expressing queer ideas, or do you think it's not necessarily dependent on the form of the music?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, in Urdu, there has been some poetry called Rekhti, which talks about the love between two women, but that's poetry. That's not a musical form as such. So, I'm actually not sure. And we must remember that in India, there are also several, a large number of Adivasi communities living. And each of those communities might have a different understanding of love. So Hindustani and Carnatic music, or even Urdu music, ghazals and nazms and all these things, or even the music in all the Indian languages, the common music that we get to hear, that doesn't represent all of Indian music. Yeah, because there are so many indigenous communities living here, each with their own language, their own culture, their own music. So what we understand as Indian music actually does not represent all of Indian music.
So these themes that you talked about the queer divine love, Um, have you incorporated those themes in your music in the past, or is that something that you plan to do?
Yeah, so this, I mean, I have a friend, he's also, in a sense, a shishya of mine. I mean, because I have taught him a lot of things, but I've also learned a lot from him. And like, he also composes quite often. So he came up with, yeah, so Khayal composition has two stanzas, Sthai and Antara. So he composed the Sthai of this composition, and he said, can you compose the Antara? So I'll first deal with the musical aspect, okay? I'll just sing the two parts and then I will explain. So this is in Rag Bhageshri. Is the volume okay? मोरी मड़ैया सुनी लागे मोरी मड़ैया सुनी लागे मोरी मड़ैया सुनी लागे तुम्हारे बिना पिया मोरी मड़ैया सुनी लागे मोरी मड़ैया. This is the Sthai that my friend composed. And now the Antara is something which I added to this song. So, भसम मलू में तन पर अपने भसम मलू में तन पर अपने तुम्हारे बिरह में भयो बाबरू तुम्हारे बिरह में भयो बाबरू तरस देहु सावरिया मुझे मड़ैया सुनी लागे मुरी मड़ैया मुरी मड़ैया सुनी लागे.
So, these perspectives of yours and these themes that that you explore, themes of separation, unity, celebration of love, or through seasons, are these conscious choices of yours, or did you just find yourself leaning towards them?
I don't think anything in art is a conscious choice. I mean, you just start with some idea, but then, like, the art guides. I mean, it tells you. I mean, it tells you what form it wants to take. It's not like चलो आज इस राग में compose करते हैं. नहीं, that's not the way it works. It comes from somewhere. So I just wait for that to come because sometimes you might get an idea, but then you might not be able to take it further. So you have to wait for that thing to sort of. It's like wine tastes better when it's older, right? So sometimes you just let these things stay. I mean, just let them stand for a while and then sort of let them brew in a sense. Sometimes a bandish gets composed within half an hour. Sometimes it might get composed in 3 years, 4 years, sometimes 10 years. So yeah, it just depends. Like some of my musical ideas that I had when I was a teenager, they finally reached completion this time in 2020. Yeah, like one Meera Bhajan, for example, which you will find on my YouTube channel. Yeah, so that's about this thing.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I was just wondering about if you look at music as an art form, and you look at music history. Um, uh, there's been a lot of evolution and innovation. So my question is, how do you see yourself as contributing to specifically the queer music culture and queer music history? Yeah, and if there are any queer musicians that maybe inspired you or influenced you in any way?
Yeah, so just to give an example of compositions of this nature, I've so I have done a Hindustani modification of the Carnatic raga Harikamboji, which I don't think has been brought into Hindustani music before. Mm, so I've composed two bandishes in Harikamboji. One is a Vilambit Khayal and the other is a Drut Khayal, like a slow Khayal and a fast Khayal. Uh, Another important genre of Hindustani music is Dhrupad. But I mean, I guess there's no time to talk about that right now. But you can check out some of my Dhrupad and Dhamar compositions on my YouTube channel. But right now, I'll just present my khayals in Harikamboji. One second. So the first composition actually talks about self-love. It's addressed to the lover within. And I think self-love is something that we often ignore. I mean, in this sort of race of finding a lover, we forget to love ourselves. So this composition is sort of a reminder. It's kind of like a note to self, you know. So तेरो मोहक रूप सखे अति सुखदाई साची कहूँ दूजो को न तुम समान ये तेरू मोहक रूप सखे अति सुखदाई साची कहूँ दूजो को न तुम समान सब जग में तेरो मोहक रूप सखे तेरो मोहक रूप सखे सखे अति सुखदाई अति सुखदाई साची कहूँ दूजो को नहीं तुम समान प्रीत हमारी है निराली सजना सदा सदा संग चल जीवन मग मोहक रूप सखे. This is the Vilambit composition. And the Drut composition, the faster composition, I'll sing it and then I'll explain it. This was in Tilwada Tal of 16 beats. The Drut composition is in Ek Tal of 12 beats. झनन झनन पायलिया झनन झनन पायलिया झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन 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 पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे बन गज सिय भय चाल बन गज सिय भय चाल गगन बसर साजे झनन झनन पायलिया झनन झनन पायलिया कबहु नारी कबहु नर कबहु नारी कबहु नर कबहु नारी कबहु नर नाही नारी नाही नर नाही नारी नाही नर मानुष यह अति सुंदर मानुष यह अति सुंदर रंग रंगीलो साजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन 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 पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन झनन पायलिया बाट चलत बाजे झनन 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 पायलिया. So such a song about piles ringing, typically it would be featured, it would be sort of picturized on a woman. But here this person is like, it's a beautiful human being. That's what this composition is emphasizing. Kabahu nari, kabahu nar. Sometimes a woman, sometimes a man. Nahi nari, nahi nar. Sometimes neither. Not a woman, not a man. Manose yaha ati sundar. It's a beautiful human being. That's the important thing. So piles are ringing, but the walk is like, the sort of mighty or the stately walk of a wild elephant, the proud, unafraid walk of a wild elephant. So women have also been described as gajagamini, like sort of swaying like an elephant, but I don't think they've been described in these terms. So it doesn't matter whether the person is a man or a woman. Basically, the piles are ringing, and this person, whoever they are, they're walking with pride, without fear. And the term Gagana Basana sort of refers to Digambar, like, basically sky clad, in the sense free from all these. I'm using it more in the sense of, free from all the, bondages or the bandhans of society. So this person is walking, free and proud. and unafraid like an elephant. So yeah, that's my understanding of it. So typically you'll think, oh, it's a like woman going to meet her lover. But here it doesn't matter. It's a human being here. So that's the way I bring queerness into my music, just a glimpse of it.
So this is mesmerizing. I'm almost speechless on the interpretation as well as how um, detailed and how perfect almost it was. And which leads me to my next question is so you doing a musicological research, and does that sometimes make you wonder about how academic literature includes queer music, as in the works of uh, the academic works on queer music, the academic works on queer um, artists. So, what kind of impact the academic side can have on pushing the boundaries and expanding and helping queer musicians, find their voice and get the recognition that they deserve?
So first of all, academic itself should not just be confined to like its ivory tower or whatever. It shouldn't just be limited to peer-reviewed publications. Academics need to go out there and spread awareness. I think that's very, very important. Of course, do research on queer musicians. Definitely, that's very important. But take that research to the world. Make that research accessible to the world. Don't just keep it within some journal and only within that select audience, whatever. So I think academics need to do a lot of outreach. That's very, very important. Not just like limit the discussion to places like Ashoka. People need to be out there talking about these things.
So, as a final question, what do you see as the legacy of your work? Not just as a musician, but as a queer musician, and also, I mean, you just talked about how what academics can do to for example, spread awareness. So, in your opinion, what changes can we should we hopefully see in the music industry in the next few years or decades, so that there's more inclusivity of the queer community and these things are talked about more?
So the thing is, I mean, first of all, this discussion itself is not happening in the world of Hindustani and Carnatic music. And we need to start the discussion first. I mean, I personally know a lot of queer musicians, but I mean, are they actually, out in the Hindustani music community at large? I'm not sure about that. So that discussion needs to start because that itself is not there. I mean, it's happening in some limited way, but it needs to happen in a bigger way.
Well, Achintya, with this, we have reached the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And we at Vistar are really, really grateful that we got to sit together on this conversation with you, because just like you, we feel as passionately about this, and we hope that and we really hope that this discussion um, makes some difference that we hope to see. Um, Everyone listening in on the podcast, do check out his YouTube channel. It's Achintya Prahlad. Some of his most minutely thought of and lovely self compositions and compositions are available there. Do join in on Vista's Heart's channel to see more podcasts, and do check out the previous podcasts. Thank you again, Achintya, for today. We really enjoyed it and hope you liked it as well.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, it was really good. I mean, it's like a very good opportunity for me, I'd say, to speak about these things. And I'm like, so like, I'm quite grateful to you guys for setting this up.